Commander Elias Cade stared at the holographic message blinking in front of him. He had faced countless missions across human space, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Supreme Council of Earth had issued a confidential order. Travel to the distant planet Zephyra and marry the youngest princess of the Lumari, an alien race that humans had only recently made contact with. The mission was clear, but the idea of being a political pawn made Elias uneasy. Marriage had never been part of his duty, yet the Council insisted it was essential for peace. When Elias's ship emerged from hyperspace, Zephyra spread beneath him like a living jewel. Towering crystal cities reflected the twin suns. Rivers of shimmering liquid ran through floating gardens, and alien ships glided gracefully above the landscape. Humans had only begun exploring this star system, but Elias could see immediately that the Lumari civilization was far beyond anything humanity had built. He was greeted by the royal envoy, a tall figure with silver-blue skin and eyes that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. The envoy's movements were precise, almost musical, and every gesture conveyed centuries of culture. Elias followed without speaking, his military training allowing him to keep calm, though curiosity and awe burned in his chest. The young princess, Lyra, waited in the central hall of the palace. She was small by Lumari standards, barely 16 cycles old, but her presence was commanding. Her hair flowed like strands of light, and her eyes were sharp, watching every movement. She did not smile, though Elias detected a hint of interest behind her serious gaze. The marriage ceremony was brief and formal. There were no flowers, no music, only the silent witnesses of the Lumari Council and their advisors. Elias felt the weight of human expectations pressing on him. He knew that to the Council this was not about love, but about alliance. To the Lumari, he was a symbol of a new era. And Lyra, she was a mystery. In the days that followed, Elias was allowed to explore the palace and its surrounding city. He saw machines that defied gravity, gardens that floated without support, and devices that could manipulate energy in ways humans had only dreamed of. Lyra followed him silently on some tours, questioning him in subtle ways about human inventions and methods. At first, Elias answered cautiously, aware of the political tension. Yet he could not help but demonstrate the human approach: trial, error, and creative thinking. One morning, while walking through the crystalline library, Elias noticed Lyra struggling with a mechanical device meant to stabilize the palace's energy fields. The device had stumped her best engineers for days. He stepped forward. "May I?" he asked. Lyra nodded, slightly surprised. Elias examined the device with human practicality. He adjusted one component, rerouted the power flow, and added a simple feedback loop. The device stabilized instantly. Lyra blinked, astonished. You fixed it?" she asked. Elias shrugged, smiling faintly. "Sometimes humans see solutions differently. We rely on instinct and creativity." That moment began a subtle shift in their relationship. Lyra started observing him more, asking questions not about politics, but about human problem-solving. She had expected a fragile, emotional human who would follow orders blindly. Instead, she found someone who could think, adapt, and invent under pressure. Elias spent hours with the royal engineers, not only helping with mechanical systems but learning about Lumari technology. He marveled at their ability to manipulate energy, bend light, and store information in crystal matrices. Yet he noticed something fascinating. Despite all their power, the Lumari often approached problems in rigid, predetermined ways. Humans, Elias realized, were unpredictable. That unpredictability could be a strength. During one late evening, while inspecting the lower chambers of the palace, Elias stumbled upon a hidden archive. Unlike the public records, this section was secured with multiple layers of encryption. Curiosity overrode caution. Using his experience in cryptography and pattern recognition, Elias bypassed the locks. What he found alarmed him. Documents and holograms revealed a plot by a neighboring faction, the Scifi, to overthrow the Lumari kingdom. The conspiracy had been in motion for decades, waiting for the right moment. The Scifi considered humans weak and irrelevant, assuming they could be ignored. Elias realized that this underestimation could be humanity's advantage. He did not speak of the plot immediately. Instead, he studied it, comparing the weaknesses and strengths of the conspirators with the defenses of the palace. The more he learned, the clearer it became. If the humans and Lumari worked together, they could prevent disaster. But he had to act carefully. Any mistake could cost lives and jeopardize the fragile alliance he was supposed to cement through marriage. Lyra found him in the archive the next evening, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Elias looked up, wary but honest. "Learning. There's a threat, one your council hasn't fully uncovered yet." Her eyes widened, but she did not panic. "Explain," she said simply. He showed her the records, explaining the planned attacks, the conspirators' methods, and their assumptions about humans. Lyra listened intently, realizing that her expectations of humans had been entirely wrong. Elias, a single human, could see patterns the Lumari had overlooked, anticipate moves, and suggest strategies that their rigid logic could not. "That is human thinking?" Lyra asked, almost in disbelief. "It is different." Elias nodded. "Different, yes, but not weak. Unpredictable, yes, but effective." Over the next few days, they began to discuss possible responses. Elias suggested modifications to defensive protocols and methods to use Lumari technology in ways the conspirators would not anticipate. Lyra began to see him not only as a husband imposed by duty, but as a partner who could save her people. Despite the political tension, Elias and Lyra spent hours talking, observing the city, and learning from one another. Humans were emotional, yes, but Elias had discipline, logic, and courage shaped by decades of interstellar experience. Lyra realized that these qualities could not only help her survive, but help her lead. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Elias and Lyra walked along a floating bridge that overlooked the Crystal City. Lights shimmered beneath them, reflecting in the liquid gardens that defied gravity. "I underestimated humans," Lyra admitted quietly. "I thought you would be delicate, weak." Elias smiled faintly, looking out at the horizon. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we think differently. Sometimes the smallest idea changes everything." Lyra considered his words. "Then perhaps this marriage is not just about politics," she said softly. "Perhaps it is about understanding, about seeing value in differences." Elias nodded. He felt a strange sense of hope. For the first time, he sensed that humanity's presence here was not just symbolic. Humans had a place in the cosmos, not as conquerors, not as fragile spectators, but as inventors, problem solvers, and unexpected heroes. That night, while the palace slept, Elias returned to the hidden archives. He studied the Scifi plot in more detail, tracing connections, identifying weaknesses, and formulating a plan. The conspirators had assumed humans would hesitate or fail. They had no idea that a human mind could foresee strategies beyond rigid logic. By morning, Elias had mapped a defensive plan that could save the kingdom, but it required careful execution. He needed Lyra's trust, the cooperation of her council, and precise timing. It was risky, but failure was not an option. As he stepped onto the palace balcony, watching the city awaken, Elias felt a surge of determination. Humanity might be small, fragile, and emotional, but it was clever, resilient, and adaptable. If he could combine these qualities with Lumari technology and courage, the outcome could change not only the fate of this planet, but the future of interstellar relations. The mission that had begun as an awkward political marriage was transforming into something far greater. Elias Cade, human and soldier, was about to prove that even one person, armed with ingenuity and determination, could shift the course of history. And in the eyes of the youngest Lumari princess, he saw recognition, not of a human pawn, but of a partner who could change everything. The horizon gleamed with light and possibility. Elias knew one thing with certainty: nothing would ever be the same again. Elias spent the next few days preparing for the coming conflict. He moved carefully, aware that the Sarathi conspirators could strike at any time. The Lumari Council, initially wary of a human influencing their plans, gradually began to trust him as he demonstrated strategies that no one else had considered. He combined human adaptability with Lumari technology, designing defenses that were clever, unexpected, and precise. Lyra worked closely beside him. She had learned to value Elias's perspective, seeing that humans were not weak or fragile, but capable of thinking in ways the Lumari could not. Together, they studied the vulnerabilities of the palace, the surrounding city, and the energy networks that powered everything. Elias suggested diversions, traps, and unconventional tactics that relied on human improvisation rather than rigid protocols. One night, as they reviewed their plan, Lyra spoke quietly. "Do you really believe this will work?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Elias met her gaze steadily. "We have something the Sarathi do not expect. They assume humans are fragile and emotional. They are wrong. We can be unpredictable. We can adapt. That is our strength." Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and confidence. She had never imagined that the human beside her could inspire such hope. But in the silent hours of the night, she began to see a future where their combined strengths could protect the kingdom and perhaps even change the galaxy. The morning the Sarathi attacked, the sky above Zifara burned with energy. Ships streamed across the horizon, and warriors descended from the clouds. The palace alarms rang, echoing across the crystal towers. The Lumari soldiers rushed to their stations, expecting a conventional battle. Elias moved calmly through the palace corridors, coordinating defenses and giving clear instructions. The Lumari marveled at his composure. He was human, yes, but his mind operated like a weapon, precise, focused, and creative. The first wave of the Sarathi attack hit with energy blasts that would have overwhelmed most defenses. Yet the traps Elias had designed turned the enemy's power against them. Energy barriers redirected blasts back at the attacking ships. Hidden platforms shifted to trap enemy squads, and unexpected diversions forced the Sarathi to split their forces. Lyra watched in astonishment as Elias guided the battle. Every decision, every maneuver displayed the brilliance of human ingenuity combined with Lumari technology. Where the Lumari relied on raw power, Elias relied on cleverness, adaptability, and anticipation. In the midst of the chaos, Elias spotted a squadron of Sarathi attempting to breach the palace core. He quickly devised a plan, instructing a small team of Lumari soldiers to use a combination of energy nets and improvised barricades. The trap worked perfectly. The intruders were caught, disarmed, and neutralized without any casualties among the defenders. Lyra could hardly believe what she was seeing. A single human, using logic, creativity, and courage, was turning the tide of the battle. She realized that the stories humans told themselves about resilience, courage, and cleverness were true. And now, those qualities were saving her people. As the battle raged on, Elias continued to adapt. Each move the Sarathi made, he anticipated. Each weakness they revealed, he exploited. Lumari engineers followed his instructions, deploying devices in ways their culture had never considered. By midday, the Scifi forces were confused, disoriented, and struggling to coordinate. Lyra felt a surge of pride. The human at her side, who had arrived reluctantly as a political pawn, had become the key to saving the kingdom. She understood now that the marriage, the alliance, and the human presence were far more than symbolic. They were essential. The final confrontation came when the Scifi commander, a towering figure with armor that shimmered like molten metal, attempted a direct strike on the palace core. Elias and Lyra moved to intercept. Using a combination of speed, traps, and human ingenuity, Elias guided a team to flank the commander, while Lyra activated an energy barrier that forced the attacker into a vulnerable position. The commander was defeated not by brute force alone, but by strategy, improvisation, and the unexpected creativity of a human mind. The remaining Scifi forces, realizing their plan had failed, retreated in disarray. Zephyra was safe. The aftermath of the battle left the Lumari astonished and humbled. They had relied on power and protocol for centuries, but it had been a human who had seen what they could not. Elias was recognized not just as a hero, but as a partner whose ingenuity had saved lives and preserved the kingdom. Lyra approached him as the dust settled. "I misjudged you," she admitted softly. "I thought humans were fragile and limited. But you have shown me that we underestimated your kind." Elias smiled faintly. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we can see solutions where others cannot. We are not perfect, but we can be effective." The council convened later that day. They formally acknowledged the value of humans, not only as allies, but as strategic partners. Elias's role in the battle had changed perceptions across the kingdom. The young princess, standing beside him, spoke to the council with confidence and authority. She highlighted how human insight had complemented Lumari technology, resulting in a victory no one could have predicted. In the following weeks, Elias and Lyra worked together to strengthen their alliance. The palace, once a symbol of rigid tradition, became a hub of innovation and collaboration. Humans and Lumari shared knowledge, combining creativity, technology, and courage in ways that expanded both civilizations. During quiet moments, Elias reflected on the journey. What had begun as a reluctant mission, a political marriage imposed by duty, had transformed into something far greater. Humanity had proven itself not through brute strength, but through intelligence, resourcefulness, and the courage to act decisively. Lyra, now more confident in her own abilities and leadership, walked beside Elias on the palace balcony one evening. The twin suns set over the crystal towers, casting light across the floating gardens. "You have changed everything," she said quietly. Elias looked out at the horizon, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "Not me alone. Humans can adapt, yes, but we cannot do it without trust and collaboration. Together, we can face anything." The future of Zephyra looked brighter than ever. Humans and Lumari, working side by side, had demonstrated that strength was not only measured in power, but in ingenuity, courage, and the willingness to think differently. Elias had arrived as a pawn in a political game, but he had become a catalyst for change. A human who reminded everyone that even a single person, armed with determination and cleverness, could shift the course of history. As night fell, Elias and Lyra watched the city sparkle below. Ships moved through the sky with quiet precision. Energy flowed through the towers, and the gardens floated gracefully. The kingdom was safe, stronger than ever, and humanity had earned a place in the hearts and minds of the Lumari. Elias realized something profound. Humans were more than survivors, more than explorers. They were creators, innovators, and unexpected heroes. The galaxy might doubt them, underestimate them, or dismiss them, but humans had proven that courage and intelligence could reshape worlds. Lyra turned to him with a smile, the kind of smile that spoke of respect, admiration, and partnership. "I see now," she said softly. "Humans are extraordinary, and so are you." Elias nodded, feeling the truth of her words. This was not just a victory in battle. It was a victory for understanding, for collaboration, and for the human spirit. Together, they had changed Zephyra forever. And for Elias Cade, the human who had been ordered to wed an alien princess, the mission had become a story of possibility, courage, and hope. The kind of story humans always told about themselves, and one that was now written across the stars.